So today, I am pleased to introduce General Darren McDew. He is the commander of the U.S. Transportation Command, headquartered at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. A Virginia Military Institute graduate who began his flying career at Loring Air Force Base in Maine, General McDew has since held numerous command positions, most recently as Commander of Air Mobility prior to coming to Transcom in August 2015. U.S. Transcom is the single manager for global air, land, and sea transportation for the Department of Defense. Transcom provides the United States with the most responsive and strategic mobile capability in which, whatever part of the world it is that he's at, we welcome his insights because he's going to kick me off the stage.
You forgot to tell me the most important part.
What did I forget?
I'm a wonderful grandfather.
Oh, and he's a wonderful grandfather of how many? Just one. How old? 2? Boy or girl?
Boy.
Outstanding. That deserves a great round of applause. General McDew, welcome to the platform.
Thanks. So that's really my identity now. I am officially a grandfather of a 2-year-old. And that is really what my son deserves, a 2-year-old. I had to explain to my son not too long ago that my job description does not include discipline. And when my grandson is angry at someone, it will be him and not me. Life is good. I want to make sure, am I on that Jumbotron over there? My apologies to any of you that have to see me in that size. I've got a quick presentation. I'm on a panel later on this afternoon. I'm not sure how many of you will get a chance to be there. I was told there may be Q&A here, but we'll see how much I butcher the time. I've got a few things to talk about, but what you really need to know is how much I appreciate what you do and how much I value what you do. Both as a Navy League, as and a maritime community, I need you and our nation needs you more than ever. I can't understate the value of the maritime domain. Now, I'm also working on my first set of khakis. As much as I talk about maritime these days, I think I've earned a set of khakis or brown shoes or something. Anytime I go in front of Congress now, 60 to 70% of my questions are about the maritime domain. And I have gotten to a place, thanks to successive numbers of MSC commanders who have educated this career-long airman, I can speak more intelligently on the maritime domain, and I try not to do anything that would embarrass me or you. So if I say something in the next few minutes that's embarrassing, just kind of go with it and know that MSC tried their best with me. I do get a lot of chance to try to educate communities on what U.S. Transcom is. Every single person in the Department of Defense and many people around the nation think they understand what Transcom is if they can spell Transcom, but very few people really know what it is. So let me tell you, I get the privilege of leading some of the greatest humans known to man. And I'll explain it just a bit. I've got a video here I want to show you, and I call this my hero video, and hopefully that will explain a little bit about Transcom. I'm glad to see you guys think that is as sexy as I think it is. Sometimes I don't get that reaction. I have to explain to people how really powerful that is. There are 140,000 people in this enterprise that make that happen. We can deliver an immediate force, and that immediate force is the envy of everybody around the world. That's through our air assets. But it's the decisive force we deliver, and that's the ability to take the Army in particular to war. That's the maritime force. That's a force that, although we're a maritime nation, sometimes our laws and our policy don't necessarily support the power and influence that we have in the maritime domain. That global responsibility, that overwhelming force of time and place makes us different than every other military in the world. Some people believe that we're the most powerful and respected military in the world because we have F-22s and F-35s. Some believe it's because of some wonderful carrier battle group we may have. It is the strength of our logistics force. I proudly say that I run and command the best combatant command of the 9. I know that Harry Harris may have something to say about that, Joe Votel may have something to say about that, but here's the difference. They all thank me for what our 140,000 people do, and that is clearly powerful. Some people, and some of the people were in my headquarters as I took command about 18 months ago, think that we just deliver stuff. No, we deliver one thing: options. We deliver options for the President, the Secretary of Defense, for this nation and our allies. And that's what makes us so powerful. There are nations in this world that can't project or sustain a force more than 90 miles outside their capital. We've been sustaining a force halfway around the globe for 15 years. That's power. But what makes the people that I brag about so special is the fact that they know they'll never be written about in the history books, because we'll write about that carrier battle group, we'll write about that F-22 or that F-35 strike. As a matter of fact, when you read about things in the news or watch them on television, think about those folks that underpin that power. When you read about that B-2 strike that went from Missouri to Syria and to Libya, and back 11,000 plus miles to drop 100 precision-guided weapons, it was our tanker force that got them there. When you see brigade combat teams rolling through Europe, it's strategic sea lift that gets it there. All the stuff you don't see on the news, a hungry child in Haiti peeling open humanitarian rations, that's U.S. Transportation Command and logistics. The world is still somewhat troubled, but everywhere around the world, they have one number to call. That number sits on the desk of the resident of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The people that must provide the options for our military to be the military that it is, live in the cornfields of Illinois. And I say that not as bragging, but fact. As I testified before Congress last week, and again in the next few weeks, what I'd like to remind the members of Congress is, as we grow and strengthen our military, or whatever you want to call it, don't forget logistics. Each service took risk somewhere under sequestration. Each service took risk in the same place. Logistics, enablers. As we build the force, the kinetic force, you can't help but have to build the foundation of that force. And that's what I try to remind people. Because I'll get the next phone call after whoever calls 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And we'll never be on CNN, but I'm richly proud of what they do, because they love doing what they do because it's the right thing to do. That's our charge. It's not easy, but that's what you pay us to do. Our big challenges, and we have as many as others, are one, contested environments. We haven't deployed in a while. We've been in sustainment mode for 15 or 16 years. We haven't had to deal with a contested environment in 70 plus years. When's the last time that we had a challenge in any domain? It's been a while. And possibly much longer for the logistics side. And it's not just for our military. It's for the people that I call my fourth component, and that's commercial industry. The industrial base of this nation, because of where the risk we've taken inside the Department of Defense, that industrial base is now part of national security. I cannot do my job, and many people can't, without the fourth component. Those folks that get all the excess capacity is now there. And that's what we've got to work together. We've got to ask some hard questions about what does that mean for the fourth component, and how do we prepare for a contested environment when I must use commercial mariners and commercial vessels to move the nation to war. Sea lift recap. The Navy has a wonderful plan, and we're working hand in hand with the U.S. Navy to develop that recapitalization plan. But let me tell you, the average age of the MARAD fleet is 39 years old. 1974. A lot of great things happened in 1974, but I don't want to hold on to those either. Our oldest vessel, the Petersburg, is 54 years old. Now, I still think that's kind of young, actually, for a person, but not necessarily for a ship. But as the current MSC commander told me recently, we didn't retire, I think it was the Ike, because she was 50. We retired her because she gets more and more expensive to maintain. So I'm just looking at a fleet that's getting more and more expensive and less reliable. So we have to get after recapitalization. We have to maybe consider new ways of doing that recap. The Navy is not going to put sea lift ships at the top of their order when they start to build the Navy, understandably so. So I'm looking at acquire use, some other methodologies for getting after recap as a bridge to building new ships. Our merchant mariner shortages are just as critical. We need about 11,000 civilian mariners to sail on U.S. flag vessels to get the nation to war. We could deploy right now with the mariners we have, but our ability to sustain that fight over time is coming under jeopardy. When I was a youngster, there were a lot of people willing to go into certain career fields. People wanted to grow up and be pilots, and some wanted to sail on ships, and some wanted to drive trucks. I'm starting to wonder where those young people are today, because we're having shortages in all of those career fields. And it is something for the nation to consider. We need another couple thousand mariners to sustain the fight, or technology that eventually makes that 2,000 mariner shortage irrelevant. And I don't see either coming too quickly or quickly enough. I don't like to hope, so it's going to be a lot of tough work, and I need your help and your partnership. As we talk about where we are today, let me read you something that might sound familiar. The American public is tired, eager to move on after recent wars, weary of engaging in another conflict around the world. Our peer nations are on the rise, and their capabilities are growing. Our military is not large enough nor properly equipped to meet the modern enemy. Our current technology and tactics are focused on winning the last war and not the next one. Sound familiar? A senior military leader goes before the Senate Appropriations Committee and says the following: I hope you will agree with me when I say that further reductions in this bill will seriously endanger the national defense. Headlines read, "People demand peace." Well, you can tell by that. That's not today, but it sounds like it is. That was 75 years ago. And that leader was General George Catlett Marshall. It's been a while. General Marshall, that was just one generation away from World War I, and it was apparent that our military was not ready for what we were about to face. He did not focus on the things that he couldn't change. He focused on the things that he had some control over. Although he asked for more money, he knew what he can control was the development of the force, the training of the force. Realistic exercises were what he demanded. He put together the most dynamic, demanding set of exercises we've ever had, called the Louisiana maneuvers. That fine VMI graduate led us into what, during the time of the interwar years, and through these maneuvers and during that time period, he not only got the maneuvers but he also started looking for the right leaders. And he was able to find those leaders that had the innovation, the courage, and the dynamic leadership that would lead us in the next war. That war-weary nation was at a crossroads, and I believe, I'm not sure if we're in the interwar years or not, but we are at a crossroads, I believe. And that, after 15 plus years of war that I'm not sure will ever subside, lean budgets, the need to update equipment, the need to prepare for the next war, we've got to focus on some of the opportunities we have and not worry as much about what we don't have, because that's not necessarily assured. So how are we going to address these complex changes and challenges? Well, I think the answer is somewhere in this room. We might have the next Marshall, the next Nimitz in this room. Actually, I believe we must have those people in this room. If we don't, what does that say about our future? Now, the part that I need to tell you about is this little archway. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this. This is at the time a small boys' school in the Shenandoah Valley, Virginia. That's now a small co-ed school in the Shenandoah Valley, Virginia. I walk through this archway thousands of times a day, usually with my chin pressed neatly up against my neck, very comfortably. And that saying is simple: you may be whatever you resolve to be. My classmates and I thought so highly of that saying, we put it on the side of our class ring. And I believe that today, more than ever, we need to resolve to be bold. We need to resolve to be more innovative than we've been. We can't stagnate, both in the military and the civilian industry. We need to come together and we need to rethink the plan for the future. In many places, we're shackled to the past. Experience is a great thing, but not when it shackles you. Then it just becomes a burden. And in some places, that's exactly where we are. There's a lot of things that we need to think about. When's the last time we didn't own every line of communication in a conflict? When's the last time we didn't have air superiority? All of that has serious implications for the logistics enterprise. And as we've drawn back forces into the United States Continental Force, I don't care how powerful your military is, if you can't get there, there's a lot less power at the other end. The Army transporters say it best: nothing happens until something moves. And I'm concerned about our ability to make that move happen. We need true innovation, and not just technology. It's innovative thought, thinking and acting differently. And how do we get there faster? So I'd like to challenge you to think differently, to act differently. What role will autonomous systems have, and how do we bake cyber defenses in it? How do we address attrition in our force? We've never considered attrition in the logistics environment. Most of you who've ever worn a uniform or wear a uniform today have an exercise, and the first thing you do is wish away all the logistics. You immediately are ready to fight. On day one, all of your forces have come to where they need to be, magically appear, and then you start the kinetic fight the next day. I have shut down the pixie dust factory we have in the headquarters of my building, and I told the COCOMs I'm no longer issuing logistics pixie dust for use in exercises. We have got to think through what it means if a ship doesn't make it. Or how do we make sure every ship does? And if you can tell me you can get 100% across the Atlantic or the Pacific, I'll love you forever. I just don't believe you. So how do we lead differently in this environment? And we've never been here, well, at least in our lifetime. Other people have. These are tough questions, but I believe we do have the answers. And there are people in this room that work for you that have the answers. You have to let them bring them forward. I find frustration in my headquarters, but as I start to unshackle things, there's excitement. People now believe that we're listening. People now believe that their ideas can come forward, and there are great ideas out there. There are some that believe that we shouldn't talk about our issues because our enemies might get wind of our problems. Our enemies have been watching us for decades. They know our problems as well as we do. I don't want to confirm them for them, but I will still stand up in front of our enemies and anybody who will ask me and say this: don't try us. I wouldn't try us. We may have our problems, we may have our challenges. We're still the mightiest military in the world. So I thank you for, one, your dedication to this industry, to this domain, to our military, for what you do in and out of uniform. We can't do anything more without you. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak here and to represent 140,000 great Americans who most Americans will never read about. My last slide has a quote on it. You got to quote a good dead guy? I quote this one. It's the Lorax. But I think that the quote is appropriate. You have proven that you care. We've got to get a lot more people to care, or nothing's going to get better. Thank you very much. Oh.